This is NextGen Indiana, where young Hoosiers talk politics,
fight for progress, and shape Indiana's future.
From Indianapolis to Fort Wayne, Bloomington to the region, we're the next generation that won't wait our turn.
This is NextGen Indiana, the voice of young Hoosiers claiming our political power.
Welcome back to NextGen Indiana, the podcast dedicated to helping young Hoosiers become more informed, engaged, and active in our democracy. I'm Diane Dior Valentina, one of your hosts, and I always lead with my pronouns. I use she, her, aya pronouns, and I am a law student here in Indiana. I want to now allow my co-hosts to go ahead and introduce themselves. Ben?
My name is Ben Barranco. I'm a student at Indiana University in Bloomington, and I'm majoring in sports media and political science.
My name is Connor Phillips. I am a incoming junior at Wabash College, also majoring in political science.
Oh yeah, thank you all so much. Today, we're super excited to welcome Coumba Kebe, the Democratic nominee for Indiana State Treasurer. This episode is part 2 of our 3-part series featuring Indiana's Democratic nominees for statewide office. Our goal is to give young Hoosiers the opportunity to hear directly from candidates, learn what these offices actually do, and understand why these elections matter. Coumba, thank you so much for joining us today, and we're excited to have you on NextGen Indiana.
Thank you.
So we always like to start. Oh, thank you, Coumba. We always like to start with the person before the politics. So for listeners who, may be hearing your name for the very first time, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Coumba Kebe?
Sure. So I'm Coumba. I am 31 years old, resident here in Noblesville, Indiana, which is like 45 minutes north of Indianapolis. I also attended Indiana University, so I'm very proud Hoosier and IU alum, really miss it there. While I was at IU, I studied community health and preventative medicine, and then I went on to grad school to get my master's in health policy and management. And over the last 10 years, I spent my career working in as an executive in the healthcare space, managing operating budgets, and doing all the fun stuff for corporate, maximizing revenues, and figuring out how to generate or maximizing revenue, and then also managing operating expenses. So I spent a lot of my time doing operational work in the healthcare space. And then maybe a couple years ago, I decided to quit my job and start my consulting business to work with home care agency owners and helping them with their business operations. And that's when I really got it really got deep into policy making and understanding some of the decisions coming out of State House that led me to running for office. But personally, I'm really passionate about public service. I'm passionate about working with seniors and working with our disabled population and making sure that people have access to the health care that they need to age and die with dignity and respect. So.
Well, yeah, thanks so much for answering that question, Coumba. So it sounds like you really had a career, spanning healthcare and advocacy before launching this campaign. I want to know, how did those experiences prepare you for running for statewide?
So what triggered my political endeavors was just the last couple of years in Indiana politics, just watching decisions come out of our state house. Even after folks like myself, I'm not the only one. There's hundreds of advocates who advocated against some of these cuts and talked about how they would impact not only our most vulnerable, but how they would have long-term economic impact, especially from a public health perspective. And we were ignored. And that is what made me run for office. And I ran for state house. And as someone who never saw myself in politics, state house was a, kind of like sink or swim moment. It was like figure it out, learn how to build infrastructure. Like I learned what canvassing meant for the phone first time, understood phone banking, understood what it meant to have like a campaign structure. So it kind of really gave me the experience that I needed on the work behind the campaign and how much people power you need behind campaigns in order to be successful, how much work it takes. And so that moment prepared me for statewide for sure, because statewide is that, but on a larger scale. But also most importantly, aside from the operations, it's just the talking to people. I mean, having those conversations with people and hearing the same concerns over and over again. It's like, people are concerned about how they're going to pay their next utility bill. Folks are concerned about whether or not their aging parent or disabled adult child is going to have health care. People are concerned about their public schools. I mean, it doesn't matter what corner of the state you're at, every single Hoosier is expressing the same concerns. And so having that perspective definitely brings a unique lens now running for office because it's like, okay, we have a problem here, and it's not just isolated to one demographic or one area or one region. This is a widespread systemic issue that we're facing here in Indiana.
Kumba, you just give us, ooh, you pump me up. Campaigns often highlight policy positions, right? I think, but leadership is usually shaped by your own personal experiences. So I'm
hmm
curious, what's one life experience that has overall, fundamentally influenced how you lead?
Oh, so many. I mean, I learned from so many leaders like in my workplace, but I think sometimes, and this is like a joke that I make, some of our greatest skills are developed from trauma. I learned how to communicate effectively with people from different backgrounds and from different, who have different levels of education because that's my family, right? I'm a first gen American. My family's from Senegal. They came from a different background. There were things that, we didn't share perspective on. And so I had to learn very early on. And my house was a household where we talked politics all the time. And there were just things that maybe my family didn't see the same way that I saw because I grew up in America and I had a different experience and a different lens. And I had to learn to navigate those conversations early and learn to lend grace and to be able to say, I hear you, but here's my perspective, or how can we find common ground? And so that skill has definitely helped me throughout my career and definitely through politics, and like now in politics, because you have to be able to be effective, to be an effective leader, communicate well and get your point across, but also understanding that not everyone is going to have the same perspective that you do because everyone is shaped by their own experiences. And so I would say that's probably the best life skill that I've learned is just like how to communicate.
And I guess to follow up on that, how has that specific, experience that you experienced a lot growing up, showed up during your campaign so far?
So how I got my start was through online advocacy on TikTok. So I started explaining like very complex Medicaid issues online and kind of breaking it down. And that's what drew people to my platform. And I think that's what shapes my campaign and how I approach running for office. Like I'm not just trying to run for office just to like, say this is why you should vote for me, but I want people to understand the importance of the role that they're voting for or to understand, why this office matters, like to help bridge the gap because I think that's part of where we struggle right now. Government leaders and politicians don't do a good job of explaining how things should work in a way that makes sense to the average everyday person. And that's really my approach to running for office is like, yes, I want to earn your vote, but I also want you to understand why this office is important in government and how it can help you feel more empowered to hold government and leadership accountable beyond me, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's, how that skill has really showed up in my campaign.
You answered it so well, Kumba. Um, you know, kind of on that same point, campaigning across Indiana gives you the opportunity to meet people from, every corner of the state. Um, I'm curious, what's one conversation with the voter that has stayed with you throughout this campaign so far?
Oh man, there's so many. I would say probably most recently I was in Daviess County, which is a county that Trump won by like 80%. This is a county that's, doesn't have a massive population of people who look like me. And, they opened their Democratic headquarters, and I can't even tell you how great the energy was there. And that, like, you would have, like, if I had never known that this was a county that Trump won by that massive, gap, I would have never believed it, because there were so many people in that room who just said all the same things I said earlier. Like, we're concerned about our schools, we're concerned about healthcare, we're concerned about the direction in which our state's going. I wasn't previously engaged, but now I'm engaged because I'm seriously concerned. Just so many everyday people stepping up to say, I don't know how I'm going to help or get involved, but I'm here because I want to do something. And so I think I wouldn't even say like there's necessarily one. It's just the amount of the same conversations that I hear that are so significant, of people who never saw themselves getting involved in a local Democratic Party now attending meetings all the time because they just want to do something.
Thank you so much for answering that question for me, Kumba. Um, and I appreciate you sharing your story because, I think it's really important for voters to know the person that they're voting for and not just the campaign, right? Um, so with that, I will turn it over to Ben, who's going to talk more about the treasurer's office, what it does, and then your vision for serving Indiana. Thank you so much, Kumba.
Thank you.
So you kind of alluded to it earlier. You said a big goal of this campaign was to educate Hoosiers about what this office really does. And I guess, I mean, my question is just that. If you were elected treasurer, what would your day-to-day actually look like, and what would you have control over? What would you do?
Yeah, so the treasurer's office, and the best way to describe it is it's an administrative role, an executive, I guess you can say an executive administrative role. I like to equate it to like a CFO of a company because that's what makes the most sense to most people. So this person is responsible for managing our taxpayer dollars, right? We've got this pot of money, and it's our responsibility as the treasurer to invest it to maximize returns, to make sure that the money is there for Hoosiers when we need it, right? And the treasurer also sits on many boards that make decisions, right? So it's twofold. The treasurer has to be responsible for managing and working with some professionals to invest it and maximize our returns, but then they also sit on boards that make critical decisions. So a couple of those, like they sit on the public retirement system board that manages our like pensions, our retirement savings system of public employees. They also sit on our statewide 911 board, which oversees funding for the statewide emergency communication system. They also sit on a bond bank board, which helps our local governments finance infrastructure and projects like local roads and systems and schools. So the treasurer not only just manages his money and invests it, but they're part of critical rooms that make big decisions for the state.
Right. So it sounds like immensely important role. And I think this is one of the things we see a lot in politics, and particularly, in local government. But that's kind of aside.
Hmm.
People don't really understand the importance of something. Like, they know why the governor is important. They know why, our state reps are important. Why
Sure.
do you think people, don't might not really get or see the importance in that treasurer's office? Why isn't it one of the more like bigger named offices, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it's because of the treasurer, right? Like, I
Hmm.
think it is, the role is always what you make it, because I think that the treasurer should be responsible for being more public facing and communicative to the public and helping them understand their taxpayer dollars. Like, I think of it like kind of like my own personal financial investor who takes my money and invests it in 401k. Imagine never talking to that person and never asking them questions in your real life. Like, that's not normal, right? And that's kind of what we've done with our treasurer. And I think it's important because I think no people, the average everyday person is, overwhelmed with everything that's going on in everyday life, but also we haven't done a good job of helping the everyday person understand all of the things. Like, I saw your guys' eyes pop out when I said all the boards that they sat on, some of the boards, and it's like that's the problem, right? There's an education gap, and I think it just has a lot to do with the leader who is in the position, and they have the responsibility to manage the type of relationship they want with the public. And I think we're at a critical point in our government and our state's history where we have to demand more transparency from this role and help people understand where their taxpayer dollars are going, how public money is being invested, and how those decisions impact us. Because what a lot of people are asking is, I'm paying and investing in this system, but why doesn't it feel like I'm benefiting from it, right? Like if you're consistently telling me that our economy is great, our investments are so good, then why am I not feeling it as our number one investor? And I think that is when this role becomes more important than it has historically.
Mhm. Would you say that that might have been one of the failures of the previous administration was not enough, or the current, I guess the current administration, not enough
Maybe
transparency?
future
Maybe
previous.
previous. Let's hope. Let's hope. Would you say, like that's kind of like how you would set yourself apart, and the bigger emphasis on transparency and
Oh,
communication? And if
yeah.
so, how, I mean, how are you really gonna accomplish that?
Yeah, I think right now, if you look at like our transparency from our treasurer's office, it's just simply posting those spreadsheets and hoping that people can make their, assumptions from it. But the everyday person doesn't know, even myself sometimes struggle looking at that, right? And helping me
Mhm.
understand that. How my approach to this office would be helping put that in everyday language and reporting it out to the public in a way that makes sense, but then also saying, this is how it impacts your everyday life. And these are the things that we could do differently, or we could, challenge our policymakers to do differently, because that's something to keep in mind. We don't make the policy, the treasurer doesn't set policy, but here's the information you need to feel empowered to go push your policymakers to improve our lives, right? And part two to that is the treasurer's office is also supposed to help us think long-term economic health, right? And this is where my public health background comes in. Like, I understand that a healthcare system, like a good, solid healthcare system, has a direct impact on our economy, right? You see that in other countries that have universal healthcare, healthy societies, healthy economy. Indiana is in a lot of trouble from a public health perspective. What does that look like 5 to 10 years from now from an economic perspective? This can impact our workforce. This can impact how much money people spend in our economy. These are the things that the treasurer should be informing us about so that we can start to think differently about some of the policies that are being pushed out of the
Right. I
legislature.
think. Right. Yeah. You have to make if inform I don't think information is any good if it's not digestible. You know, you have to make it easy to understand, easy to process. Especially, I mean, and like it sounds like you guys deal with complex stuff. So making it,
Yep.
yeah, like making it digestible, totally good. I'm curious, are there any other parts of your background that you think equip you very well specifically for the expectations and the role of this office?
Um, I think I'll probably just emphasize some of the things I've already said.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just having this public health lens, I think brings a different perspective to this office that we haven't had before. And, public health teaches you to think critically about certain decisions, right? We know that when we make a decision in this segment, it's going to impact people this way, right? We know that decisions from a policy and a financial perspective have impacts on people, and it has impacts on our system. And I think one thing that our current government does is they only think session to session, election to election. How do I get elected this year? What do I need to do to get elected? We're not thinking long term. And so that is a perspective that I would bring to the office that I think is largely missing at the state house.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I think where a lot of the disillusionment comes from in our current state of politics is, they see politicians and they're only looking kind of like you said, like term to term, short-term goals, short-term gains. What can I get
Right.
out of this session? And it really sounds like the treasurer's office can't afford to do that. You have to be looking long term. You have to be looking um, sustainably.
Well, especially now when we have so many Hoosiers screaming like, "Hey, we need help. Like things aren't going well. Our our local governments are, starving for resources. Our public education systems are raising the red flag. I mean, people are like, life is just unaffordable, like for most people. And so when you're at that point, it's like, okay, again, if where is our money going if it's not going to us and it's not benefiting us? And I think that's why this year the treasurer's office matters. I mean, and it always matters, but it's like this is a time where we kind of have to look to this office and say, hey, can you provide us some transparency here?
Right. Yeah. So this is my one more question.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to turn it over to Connor and talk about some of the stakes for younger voters. But and you've laid out your priorities already, but I'm curious if you had, a day one goal, a day one accomplishment, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, day one priority would be reviewing our current investments, right? Like fully understanding what have we invested in, what do those returns look like, and then reporting it out to the public in a way that's digestible. That is number one. And then also just making sure that we're making smart decisions that put Hoosiers first in these rooms where the treasurer sits on a board. And so that would be number one priority is how do we get this information out to the public quickly, so that they can feel empowered and have the knowledge they need to go hold our legislature accountable.
All right, so as Ben mentioned, we're kind of moving into my section now, and I'm kind of focusing on two things. So half of this is going to be kind of looking into this race's impact on young people, and then the other half is going to be looking into just the state of the campaign. What are your thoughts? How are things going? So first question I got is, a lot of people our age, around our age, often overlook a lot of races that aren't at the very top of the tickets of president. Why do you think that this election is important? Like, what's a succinct way you can describe why this election is important?
Every election is important, right? Um, but I think if the last couple of years have taught us anything, is that we are really testing the bounds of our Constitution right now. We've probably gone as far as we can go. And I think that we have to remember that this is our future as young folks. Like, this is my country. I love my country. I may criticize our government at times, but it's because I love it and I don't want to live anywhere else. And I know what this country is capable of. It's made up of incredible people. And so I think it's important that people realize that even if something may not affect you directly right now, you don't want to wait until it impacts you directly to care. And I think that is something that I really want young people to understand is that we should care about our neighbors. We should care about the people around us. Even if something's not directly impacting us, because we just have to remember, like, one day it could be us, it could be someone that you know and love. And again, it shouldn't take that for us to have empathy for one another. And I just think there's a lot um, at risk here for our future, when it comes to, we can talk economy and, we can talk workforce, but also just basic human rights. And I think it's important to restore some semblance of balance at the state house so that we have different perspectives, to ensure that the legislation and that the policy and financial decisions that we're making is actually reflective of the communities we serve.
Absolutely, I think that's a really good point. You hit that on the head. Being more proactive instead of reactive when problems come up. So next good question I have is, what are some issues you're hearing the most from young Hoosiers around on the campaign trail?
I think one of the things I'm hearing is that a lot of folks just feel they don't have a lot of hope. A lot of young folks don't have a lot of hope in voting or our government. And I would love to hear from you guys as well. But that's like the number one thing I'm hearing. Like, what difference does it make? I don't think my vote matters. And I think a lot of that too has to do with, at least for me, just not seeing myself in leadership, not connecting with anyone that was like maybe running for office. And I think that may be what folks are experiencing too, is just that, we parade around and ask for your vote every 2, 4 years, but people don't necessarily feel represented or they don't feel like their ideas are represented within candidates. And so I think it's important for us to do that as candidates to make sure that we listen to young people and take into consideration their viewpoints, and make sure that we do our best to represent what the future generation is looking for in their leaders. And because in order to engage that group, you have to listen to what matters to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. Like I mentioned this in our interview with Bo Bai recently, was that, I've heard that from a lot of my friends that they don't feel represented. What's the point of voting? That is a really common thing, at least with my friend group, and I'm sure my co-hosts have probably seen some of the same experiences of just people just kind of being, why it doesn't even matter, which
Right.
I think is wrong. I think we both agree on that. Your votes do matter. Um,
And I will add one thing, your votes do matter, and if it didn't, they wouldn't be trying so hard to make it harder for us to vote. And so I just think it's important to keep that in mind, and to provide that context to young folks.
well put, well put. So Democrats, Hoosiers on the ballot have about 6.5 million Hoosiers on the ballot have access to a state house race where a Democrat is running. So one of the big things is Democrats branching out statewide. So as they kind of continue to work all across the state in races, what is your strategy for reaching voters across the entire state?
I think it's important, one, that we do celebrate this moment in history. Obviously, giving people a choice is important. I mean, we historically have not had that in Indiana, and the fact that we have so many contested races and get great Democrats on the ballot is great. And I'll be there to support as many down ballot candidates as I can, because to me, it's important that we just have balance. We need balance right now. We've been in a Republican supermajority for over 20 decades, and we see how that's where that's gotten us. For me personally, my approach to this role, guys, if I'm being transparent, is this office should not be partisan. I mean, it's just that simple. This office is a fiduciary office that is responsible for managing taxpayer dollars. This office should be responsible for reporting to Hoosiers on where their taxpayer dollars are going. It's become partisan because it's been under Republican supermajority for the last 20 years. Taxpayer dollars shouldn't be used to make political or partisan statements. And so to me, that's my approach. I have my own values that align closely with the Democratic Party, and I'm not afraid of that. But the role of this job, from my perspective, is I report to all people, regardless of what political party you identify with. And I think it's important that we restore some integrity back into this office by taking that approach for the treasurer's race. And I think that's the type of approach you need for a race like this to reach voters across the aisle, especially in a state like Indiana, and to help, put the seat and get some balance restored there and hold our current leadership accountable.
Very well said. Last question from me is, what message do you have to someone voting in their first statewide election?
Thank you. Please, thank you so much for voting. First of all, I think this is for me, I just think back to the moment when I first casted my ballot, and I actually think I casted my first ballot for Hillary Clinton. Um, was it my favorite? Maybe not, but I was so excited to show up and cast my ballot because for me, the story was super meaningful. My parents left their home in West Africa to the United States and speak a lick of English, were not, educated in the US, made a lot of sacrifices, and I was born and raised here, and I was able to have this honor to go cast my ballot for president. And I think it's just important to remember too that sometimes we're not just casting a ballot for us, we're casting a ballot for other people who may not be able to, for our community, for our future, and for our country. And it's a massive deal, and it's something that we should take pride in, and be grateful that we live in a country where we have the opportunity to do that. And I just want people to know, like, if you feel unheard, this is your one way to be heard, to go cast your ballot. Um, that's why voting is so important. To me, it's like your one chance to take part in the system. And I've learned that democracy doesn't work if we just don't participate. Like we have to participate. And Indiana has low voter turnout, and we're now paying for it. And I hope that this year we can really motivate people and encourage them to get out there and vote because things hurt now, but we want to make sure that they don't get any worse, right?
I mean, Kumba, you pump us up. You pump me up. You
Oh,
do it every time. Um, well, thank you so much for answering those questions. I now want to transition us into rapid fire questions. So let's wrap things up with a few rapid fire questions.
wait,
What is your,
before we do that, I want to turn it around real quick. Um,
yeah.
what are some of the like what are some of your top concerns or some things that you wish you heard candidates talk about more? I guess I don't get a chance to talk to like college students on one forum, so I mean I'm interested to hear your guys' perspective.
Connor, I'll let you lead and then, or whoever wants to go first. Let me sit in that question for a second. Thanks for asking, Kumba.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I might need to think about that for a moment too. That's
All
a
right.
good question.
I had one thing did jump into my mind, and it was kind of while we were going through the segment about what a treasurer actually does, it kept sounding to me like, wait, like this shouldn't be a partisan office, right? And then when you said it, I was like, there you go. Like, that's perfect. So I think like honestly, because a lot of what I hear and a lot of what I interact with is the disillusionment. Politics doesn't matter. Everyone's either working for party or working for self.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, yeah, like we as Democrats, we have to make the argument that, there's some offices that shouldn't be partisan.
Yeah.
This should be just for the betterment of the community and the betterment of the people. And I think yeah, that's what I would say. That's a big thing I hear a lot is people are disillusioned. I think this would
Yeah.
help.
And it doesn't mean we hide from our values,
Right,
right?
not at all.
Like I have values that align closely with the Democratic Party, but this role is about investing in safekeeping taxpayer dollars. How did it get to this point, right?
Mhm. Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think for me, kind of going off what Ben was talking about, I think when I tell people like I'm a Democrat, right, and they automatically tie me to like some of the more crazy stuff they see on the national television. So, like I think like a lot of things I hear from people is that if you're a Democrat, it's a one size fits all, which I don't think is true. I think you can be a Democrat, kind of like how you're saying, Kuba, where you want to act more independently as the office. The office shouldn't be partisan. So I think that that's something I hear, and I think that that's a good policy point, trying to maybe make the office as nonpartisan as possible.
Hmm. And that's not a bad thing, right, guys? Like, I mean, it's not a bad thing that. And yeah, I mean, at least from my perspective, right? We can have our conversations about values and, that this is what I support the LGBTQ plus community and all of these things, but I don't create policy for my office, right? So I think it's important, and that's where the education piece comes in too. I think people want to know where their leaders stand on critical issues. And I think that that's important, but we also have to educate people on what roles actually create policy and what roles don't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think for me, I think I'm less interested in hearing a list of campaign promises, right? I don't want to hear what your goals are in the campaign. I love hearing what your campaign is about, right? But I can look that up on your website. I
Hmm.
think for me, I'm more interested in understanding who the person is, right? What
Sure.
drew them to the office? What the office that they're running for actually does, and why someone who's 18 or 22 or 30 years old should care about that office. I think that I want people to leave this conversation feeling like they understand both the office and the person that's asking for their vote. I mean, I think that's where we mess up, or candidates mess up, is they give us a list of campaign priorities and expect us to know what all of that means, the technical jargon, right?
Yeah.
No, that's not how you reach young people. And I think that that is especially important when you are trying to get the young vote.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much for asking us that question, Kumba. I think you're the first person ever asked us a question on the podcast. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Um,
Thank you guys. That was helpful.
well, thank you. So let's wrap things up with a few rapid fire questions. What is your favorite place in Indiana that everyone should visit?
Like, what are we talking? Food or what?
Doesn't matter.
Mm. I know this is basic, but I just love Mass Ave. I do enjoy Mass Ave downtown. I also just like my little Hamilton County center mall. I don't get around much
I
anymore.
love it. I
I
love
don't get
that.
around much now that I do, but like I personally am very much so a homebody, but I love to eat out. So like Livery is one of my favorite restaurants.
Um, Ben, sorry. You, Ben.
All right, good. So, okay. Now, we know that you graduated from IU. So, kind of question in the same vein. What is the best restaurant in Bloomington?
Oh, what's that Thai place on 4th Street?
Siam House? I
I think
don't,
yes,
yeah,
that was my favorite. Pad Thai chicken, extra spicy. We would get that like once a week.
you have to. No, I know. So, like, I actually still have yet to go to Siam House. I really need
Really?
to.
So good.
Like, it's on the list, but everything I've heard, people just love it.
Oh,
And I'm
wait,
like,
I lied. There's another
what?
one.
Okay.
ZNC. Is that still there on Kirkwood?
What kind of like,
It's
what do they
Chinese.
do?
It was Chinese right by the Jimmy John's, right by upstairs pub. Is it not there anymore?
It might not be there anymore, actually.
If you could give your a younger version of yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Stop worrying so much and like I think maybe too, and stop being so hard on yourself. I'm still telling myself that, but um, yeah, young me worried a lot about the future. I worried a lot about where I would be 20 something years from now. And now that I'm like in my 30s, it's like it's it's not important. Just enjoy where you're at, have fun, live life, and spend less time worrying and just enjoy the moment.
That's a good piece of advice. Say you're going on a road trip in Indiana. Where would you go? Like, where's a good destination you would go to?
I mean, Brown County is always a good place to go, right? Always looks good, close to Bloomington. Trying to think where else. I love a good like White River float. That's not really a drive for me right now, but if for someone else it might be. But yeah, I think I'll say Brown County.
Yeah, Brown County's beautiful. The Little
Yeah.
Smokies. That's what they call it.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and
It's really
it
unique.
it lives up to the name. I mean,
Yep,
honestly,
it
And I
does.
it's cool.
and I feel like Bo said that too. Did he
Did
not
he
say something
really?
about Brown
I think
County?
he said French Lick, but it might have been.
Oh,
But
I feel
French
like he
Lick
said
is
Brown
cool
County at
too.
one point too.
Brown
Hey, great
County's a
minds
nice
think
place.
alike.
That's true. That's
Well,
true.
because he might have spent some time in Bloomington too, so I think it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he clerked for a judge down here.
Yeah.
But Kumba, if you had one book that influenced your leadership the most, what book would it be?
Energy Bus. I can't remember who wrote it. I can't remember if it's Simon Sinek or something like that, but it was Energy Bus, and it was talking about how, like, the whole premise of the book is how one bad apple, one vampire, energy vampire, can ruin the entire ecosystem of the bus, can ruin the entire mood of the bus. And as a leader, it was like you either have the option to like retrain and coach them, or you may have to get that energy vampire off the bus if they're not willing to get on board. And that's how I feel about politics. If our leaders are not willing to get on board with the people, then get them off the bus.
Very well said, Kumba. I guess my last rapid fire, tea or tea?
Coffee. I love them
What
both.
kind of
Coffee.
what kind of coffee? If you had to go into like a coffee shop and say your order right off top, what's your coffee order?
Some sort of latte, like Extra espresso shot with oat milk.
That.
Yeah, a little bit of hazelnut. Some days I like really sweet, some days I don't. Um, so yeah, but that's my normal order.
Well, before we let you go, I want to ask you one simple question. If there's one message you'd like every young Hoosier listening today to take away from this conversation, what would it be?
Hmm. Wow, this one's hard. Just one. Um, I don't want to be cheesy, but this is really how I feel. I think we should extend more grace and kindness to one another as people, um, and just be more compassionate towards others, just no matter who they are, where they come from, what their ideas are. I know that's hard, but we are at a moment in our time, I think, where humanity just needs a little bit more love and kindness and compassion. And I think that energy is contagious. And so the more we can do that with each other, with our friends, with our neighbors, um, the better we'll all be. So.
Kumba, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for taking time to speak with us. And thank you everyone for listening to Next Gen. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to follow the podcast, share this episode with a friend, and stay tuned for the final installment of our three-part series featuring Indiana's Democratic nominee for Comptroller, Jessica Bailey. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you all in the next episode.
NextGen IN is the property of Black Pearl IT Solutions and Black Pearl Studios. Executive producer, Indiana's own Dana Black. Music by Omar Farouk from Pixabay.